When you're in trouble, what better than your protagonist in a suit of armor to get the job done? I am the Game Collector, and this is Second Opinion Games, and today we're gonna look at some of the knights in video games.
Second Opinion Games.
Wizards and Warriors for the original Nintendo was probably the first time I ever looked at a video game and thought, holy crap, there's a knight in a suit of armor, and boy is he ever. He can also jump remarkably high, seeing that he has all this armor on. After all, this is a platform game, where the goal is to collect keys to open up doors, and lots of treasure, killing things along the way, just like a knight should. Eventually, you will have a showdown with the wizard, and presumably save a princess. In later games, they have Fabio do the art cover for some reason, and they also add in lots more RPG elements. The Wizards and Warriors series is pretty darn good, and I strongly recommend you take a look at them. But this first game is just a little bit too tough for me, so maybe I'd have an easier time with Ghosts and Goblins. In Ghosts and Goblins, again for the NES, you play as Arthur, who just wants to have a picnic with his best girl while laying back in his underwear, until some evil demons come and steal her away. Now you're forced to put on your suit of armor and rescue her and save the day. And eventually get your groove on. I believe that's what you're kind of working to here. I mean, why else would you just be laying around in your underwear? And speaking of underwear, you're gonna see a lot of poor Arthur here, wearing just his skivvies, because his armor shatters into a million pieces the second he touches anything. To help you out, well, you have some different weapons that you could pick up along the way, whether it's absolute worthless fire or your lance that you start off with. But if you want any chance of beating this game, then you better get and hold on to the knife, because that is by far the best weapon here. However, due to its unforgiving difficulty, you're probably never gonna beat the first level of this game. We're gonna have to move on to the 16-bit generation to find some knights worthy of their armor. Jumping over to the Super Nintendo, we have Knights of the Round. This is a particularly rare game, so don't expect to find it in a thrift store. It's a 2D side-scrolling beat-em-up where Arthur, Lancelot, and Percival try to win back their Holy Grail from some other evil knights. Now, in this game, it's not as simple as just hacking and slashing your way through it. There's also a block button, and an attack button that takes a little bit of your energy away, but is extremely useful against the bosses. Every single round, your energy gets refilled, so you might as well use that advantage while you can. And there also is some RPG elements added in here just for good measure. You might find your character levels up as you're playing, or at the end of each round. You can collect some treasure, and the game plays really good, actually, for a beat-em-up of this time, and it is certainly one worth tracking down. But you know what? It just doesn't get my fix going for the knights that I really need. For that, we'll probably have to look to the Sega Genesis. Rocket Knight Adventures came out in 1993 and took advantage of the full power of the Sega Genesis. Hooking a rocket ship to the back of a freaking knight in a suit of armor is genius. Propelling yourself forward, slashing through your enemies in no time is insane. And I wonder if these evil pig villains got their armor from the same place that Arthur did from the Ghosts and Goblins series, because it just shatters the second you even touch anyone. And who could really argue with a rocket on top of a back of a freaking knight? This thing is amazing. You have to use it to manipulate your character through different corridors, and there's also lots of effects going on here. The lava level is probably my least favorite, but I do like how you have to look at the reflection in the lava to see where the platforms are and how you actually have to progress through the level. If you don't realize this, well, you're just gonna die like a million times. And this is one of the best times you will ever have playing your Sega Genesis. They also made a sequel called Sparkster that came out on the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis, even though they're two different games, but we're not going to get into that because you don't have to look any farther for a great Sega Genesis game than Rocket Knight Adventures. Wait a second, what is Sparkster anyway? Oh, he's a freaking possum? Well then why the heck don't we have more games where your protagonist is a possum?
Awesome, possum kicks Dr. Machino's butt. I'm awesome.
Oh yeah, that's why. Well, I guess we'll move on to the 32-bit Sega Saturn. Clockwork Night was a launch window game for the Sega Saturn. Because of this, they really had to cut a lot of content out, and it's only about 5 stages long. And it really does prove that 2D platformers weren't dead at this time, because it's a lot of fun. I really like how you have to look to the background to see what goes on in the foreground. Sometimes books will fall down and create different barriers, and you really have to watch what you're doing at all times. There's also some collectibles scattered about through the game, and the bosses are a little creative. My favorite one is Starscream from Transformers. Yeah, they probably say it's something else, but you know who this character is. It is an epic fight that I cannot stop playing, because I just love playing with Transformers, and seeing these other toys fight them is incredible in its own right. It's kind of like when I had my G.I. Joes fight my Transformers, but you know what? You guys really don't tune in here to listen to my fan fiction of G.I. Joes, so we'll get to something else. And that something else is Clockwork Night 2, because they actually finished the game. Now, ideally, these games in general were going to be one complete package, but you know what? We got them separate, and I'm actually kind of glad we did, because I think they added a couple of extra things in this game because of it. They really threw it in your face now, the special effects left and right. They made the worlds much more open and explorable to find all of the great things. At the end of every level, they refined it a little bit where it makes it easier to hit that bonus, but still somehow I never can get that stinking bonus. And it's a much more complete package, including here there's even a boss rush mode where you can fight the first bosses from the first game. So this really is the best Clockwork Night game there ever was. And it's good because, you know, the series is dead now, and we're probably never gonna see a sequel, but I'm still holding out hope. But while I'm on the Sega Saturn, we might as well turn to the last night that I could think of. Nights in the Dreams for the Sega Saturn was one of those titles that everyone just talked about, and you had to have it. So when I got my copy for my very self, well, I wasn't playing with one of those 3D control pads, and I immediately hated this game. Eventually, I did pick up a 3D control pad and was still really confused what everyone loved about it. Sure, you start off and you can just walk around in this 3D space that feels really awkward. Eventually, you do find knights, and then it's just him picking up blue orbs and running through things. The music is great, the sound's actually pretty good, and the graphics are kind of cool, the way the world twists around your character. And then eventually, when you pick up enough blue orbs, you fly into a Metroid, and if you have enough of them, it explodes and sends you on a new path. Now, you don't really have a health bar in here, and just the time clock, which when time runs out, it's immediate game over, and you have to start from the freaking very beginning all over again, which is kind of good. It keeps the pacing really well, but when you come to a boss, you're immediately confused on how you should ever beat any of the bosses in this game. I don't know what the freak I'm supposed to do here, and when you die, you go back to the beginning of the game, so you're just going to be playing and replaying it a lot, which, thank God, I guess, because it's relatively short. But I don't have much patience for it, even though I'm told this is one of the best games ever. So later, a sequel came out on the Wii called Knight's Journey into Dreams. Now, you could play this one with the GameCube controller, so I immediately picked it up and thought that I was going to have a much better time with it. After all, this is a sequel to one of the best games ever made. And sure, this time around, you could tell that it's not a Metroid, it's actually like chains and a lock that you kind of have to pick up keys to open now. And so, are the blue orbs not really doing anything? I'm really not sure. On top of it, this girl looks like she's having one really scary freaking dream about her mom pressuring her to play the violin just a little bit too much. Now, this game, I'm saying, is actually better than the Sega Saturn Nights into Dreams, but no one's really gonna listen to me or even bother caring because that other game is just maybe a little too overhyped. I'm not saying that it's bad. No, I could certainly see how great it was for the time, and trying to figure things out is something that I really love in video games. But anymore, sometimes I just don't have the patience and want a more arcade feel. Now, this night's game does feel pretty good, and I gotta say the graphics are cool too, but it went over kind of like a Led Zeppelin. Not the band, but the actual Zeppelin made of lead would crash. I don't think anyone actually made that, but it didn't do so well. So we're probably never gonna see any sequels from here on. But if you want to get any of these games, I recommend getting Rocket Knight, because that game is freaking awesome. And of course, that's just my opinion. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I had a great time making it, and if you have some ideas of some videos that I should handle in the future, please let me know. I'm making huge lists about all of the recommendations that I'm getting from you guys, the listeners, and even this one itself was something that was suggested to me. So hopefully I will hear from you soon, and until later, I will see you again, guys.